At the beginning of Phissos, we see a boy picking up a girl on his pier and going somewhere, and he says that,
"You can't die. I will save you. This is your elder brother's promise."
When the scene shifts and we see Tanjiro heading to the city to sell charcoal, his mother gently reminds him.
"You really don't have to venture out in that snow."
But Tanjiro still says it's new.
The new year is approaching, and I wish that during this celebration we can enjoy a hearty meal together, which is why I have to go.
But then his brother and sister start insisting on going with him. But later on the explanation of his mother and Tanjiro, he agrees. Then Tanjiro gets out of there. On the way, she meets her sister Natsu and says that she was putting her younger brother to sleep, otherwise he would cry a lot. Now Tanjiro goes towards the city. Now Tanjiro starts selling charcoal by reaching the city. Only then do we see a boy avoiding a woman. Tanjiro comes over and says,
"Could you please tell me who is responsible for this?"
It's broken, and then Tanjiro smells it and tells him that.
There is an unmistakable scent of a cat.
Yes, then the boy says to the lady that
As I said earlier, I didn't break the plate.
Now observing the fall of night, Tanjiro steps out to the house, but then suddenly, an elderly man calls out to Tanzir's.
"This time, it is not right for you to go home. You should come inside the house before the monster comes."
Then Tanziron comes inside the house and starts eating food. And while eating, he asks the old man, "What is this demon?" And then the old man tells me,
"Monsters come at night to devour humans. So it's not okay for you to walk around at night. Go to sleep and go home in the morning."
Now in the morning, the Tanjiro walks home. But as soon as he reaches his house, he starts to get a blood stain and he runs to his house. But as soon as he gets there, he finds that everyone in his house has been killed. Seeing this, he is very surprised and begins to think,
Who did that? This.
Meanwhile, he sees that his sister Natsu is still alive and he picks her up on his back and starts running towards the hospital. Running away, Tanziras gets very tired, and because of the cold, it becomes difficult for him to breathe. But all of a sudden, we see that Nezuko begins to transform into a monster and they both fall down the hill, but because of the snow, they both survive. But then Tanjiro sees Nezuko standing on his feet. Then Tanjiro says, "Stand up."
It doesn't necessarily have to be. I'll take you to the doctor.
And then he transformed into a monster. Attacks the scissors, and the scissors stick their axe wood in their mouth to protect themselves. But I start to get heavy on the Juko Tanjiras, and the Tanjiras start to say emotionally,
"Forgive me. When you were dying, I was sleeping. I could not save anyone, but I will at least save you." You can't be a monster.
At this moment, we observe Nzuku's eyes welling up with tears. Suddenly, a boy attacks Nzuku with a sword, but Tanjiro intervenes. The boy then questions Tanjiro.
"Why are you saving this monster?"
Huh? Then Danjiro says that.
This is my sister.
Now the boy seizes the ninjutsu and speaks.
"That it is my duty to find every rock and kill it."
But then Tanzaro says,
That the ninjas didn't kill a single person. Even I had an unusual scent wafting from my house. I suspect he murdered my family. How did he transform into a monster?
So the boy narrates to him.
"The wounds must have come in contact with the blood of demons. This is why it has become a monster. And this is how these monsters increase their population."
But then Tanjiro says,
My sister didn't kill a human being. Please leave her then, that boy.
says that.
"Are you seriously suggesting I just let it slide? They will attack you."
But then Tanjiro says,
She's my sister. She recognizes me as her elder brother. She won't harm me. I'll find a solution to this.
and then the boy says,
"Upon becoming a monster, a man cannot revert back to a human."
but Tanjiro implores, please leave it.
I will definitely find a way and...
He starts to beg ahead of him. And then the boy says,
"You can't rectify it. If I depart, you'll become a monster. Is that what you desire? And you're too feeble anyway. Indeed, possibly the demons might have a method to restore your sister, but they will never do it because those with power perpetually dominate the weak."
then that boy is me. But 10-0 attacks that boy. But that boy hits 10-0 on the head and knocks him unconscious. And only then he sees that Tanziron does not have his axe. And only then Tanziron's axe passes by him and hits the tree. Then the boy is very impressed when he sees the cunning of Tanziron's. How? He dodged him. But his actual plan was something else. Nezuko attacks the boy and heads to the Tanzirons. At first, the boy thinks Nezuko will attack the Tanziri, but then sees Nezuko saving the Tanziri. Now Nezuko is about to attack the boy again, yet the boy contemplates.
How is this possible? Are you hungry right now? It appears substantial, yet still.
She is reserving her brother's spot for eating.
And then the boy thinks,
Maybe it's different from the others.
so he knocks out the fragile ones, and when the Tanziri flies, he sees that the fragile ones are lying near him. The boy tells you to get up.
Go to Mount Sagiri as soon as possible. There you will find an old man whose name will be Sakonji Uron. When he finds you, tell him he sent you.
And he says that.
There are clouds in the sky right now. Now your sister will remain, but take care that she is never in the sunlight. Don't let go.
And saying that, he leaves, and then the scene shifts and we see Tanjiro burying his family and walking towards Mount Sagiri. At the beginning of the episode, we see Tanjiro bringing some bamboo sticks and a broken basket to Nezuko, and fixing the basket to protect Nezuko from sunlight. And then asked the Naiks to come inside the basket. But his height increased greatly due to his becoming a monster. Then Tanjiro tells him to lower his height and adjust inside the basket. Now Nezuko comes into that basket by adjusting her height and asks for the way to Tanjiro Mount Sagiri. Now it gets night, and when he reaches a temple he starts smelling blood, and when he runs inside the temple he sees that the monster is eating people and there is no one alive, and then he says, "Monster."
Indeed it is mine.
Hearing this frightens the Tanziras, and he attacks the Rakshas Tanziras. Seeing blood, Nezuko's mouth waters from hunger. The Tanziras start fighting the Rakshas, but hearing their screams, Nezuko swiftly flees. A monster arrives, decapitates the monster, and declares, "You are a monster."
How can you live alongside someone?
And that monstrous creature attacks Tanziri despite being without its head, but Naju retaliates by kicking and throwing it away, which leaves Tanjiro quite astonished and deep in thought.
How can this headless monster manage to attack and communicate?
Next, we witness hands sprouting from the sides of the monster's head, enabling it to assault the Tanjars. Meanwhile, the demon's body mercilessly strikes the delicate ones, while Tanjiras confronts the demon's head. But he knocks his head away from him and then throws it towards a tree with his axe so that the head of the monster gets stuck with that tree, and Tanjiro goes to save his sister. And when Tanjiro pushes the body of that monster to save Nezuko, he is with that monster. He starts to fall into the ditch, but Naju comes at the right time and saves Tanjiras, and the body of the monster falls down and dies, causing the head of that monster also becomes unconscious. Now when Tanjiro starts hitting the demon's head, a man comes from behind him and says,
It can't be defeated.
and then on Tanjiro's question, that man says,
Ponder over ways to kill it.
and then Dawn comes with one stone. Now he's just getting the courage to kill that monster, that man thinks.
This boy displays an unusual kindness. Despite the Rakshas standing before him, he remains indecisive. It's unlikely he will harm it.
And then we see that morning. Tanjiro would have been astonished to learn that the monster perished from mere exposure to water and sunlight.
Ultimately, the monster's demise came from just a bit of sunlight.
Later, he finds his sister and relaxes by shaping her inside the temple. Now he seems to think.
Where has that man gone now?
Tanjiro. He comes out where the man is sitting and praying, and the man tells that his name is Sarkanji Urukodaki and asks, "Are you?"
That's precisely what Dutomiyaka did.
When it is sent, Tanjiro tells me.
Yes, I am the same.
Then the man inquires further.
What if your sister devours a human being?
Hearing this, Tanjiro is shocked. So that man comes to Tanjiras and slaps him a slap and says,
You are extremely slow in making decisions, thus you couldn't kill that monster before dawn. Why can't you answer my simple query? I will explain. Your resolve is too weak. Here are your two options. If she consumes a human, you must first kill her and then end your own life. Alternatively, you can ensure it never happens. Do you comprehend?
Sultan Zero says yes, then that man says, come on.
Now let's examine your test to determine if you are fit to join the Diamond's Lair Cups. Retrieve your sister and accompany me.
Now 2 people are running away. They arrive at the mother's house and then the man calls the Tanziers.
We have to go to the mountain for your test, and I promise until you come back, I will take care of your sister.
After that, they both climb the mountain. It is very dark and difficult to breathe. Then what about that man? It seems that...
You must reach my house before dawn, that too alone.
Saying this, the man disappears somewhere in the mist. At first, the Tanziers think that I will easily find the way by the smell of that man, and he starts to descend the mountain. Only then he gets caught in a trap. Then he realizes that this is the real test. He has to cross all these traps and reach down till morning, and he finally reaches that man's house after crossing all the traps with great difficulty. In the meantime, he has suffered many injuries. Seeing this, the man said,
But from today you are my disciple.
So with this, the second episode ends at the beginning of the episode Take Us Diamonds. The Yar Corps is said to be an organization that has been killing monsters for the past 100 years and is not associated with any government. Were we not told how the demons came into being? All we have been told is that monsters heal their wounds in minutes and their favorite food. They can only be killed by sunlight or a special type of sword, which absorbs sunlight, and Diamond Slayer kills these monsters to save humans. Then the man says to Tanjiro,
I'm a trainer, and my job is to prepare people for Demon Slayer. And there are trainers. Everyone has their own way of teaching, and you will have to go through the final selection processor to join the Diamond Slayer Corps, because it will be in Mount Fuji that will decide whether you are qualified to become a Diamond Slayer or not.
And with this, the training of Tanjiro starts, and here we see that Tanjiro for day. The day is getting better. Now he crosses all the traps easily, and his training is getting more difficult day by day. For once, it seemed that this man,
He wants to kill me now.
he is practicing using a sword until his hands hurt. He is now in training. The man calls the Tanziers.
If you ever break your sword, I'll break your bones.
Tanziras learns different forms as the man advises.
I will tell you all the forms. We will start with a deep breath that will increase the natural healing power of your body.
And they make a lot of mistakes. Now in the next scene we see that man throws Tanjiro down the waterfall, and in the next scene we find out that Nezuko has been sleeping for the last 6 months for no reason. He also showed the doctor, but he knew something. And they say that
I am afraid that somewhere in one day I will get up and not bend down and die.
a year passes, and that man calls Tanjiro.
I have taught you everything now. Now what you have to do is not do, which will find out if you can go to the next level or not.
Now the man took the scissors to a big stone, and he says,
That if you cut this stone in two, I will let you go to the final election.
and now I think that someone,
How can the sword cut it in half?
and the man vanishes into thin air. Now after that day, Kanjuro starts practicing daily and tries to cut that stone, yet he has not achieved any success. 6 months have passed and they are still there. Then we see another boy come there and call the Tanziers.
You are too slow, weak, and immature. I don't consider such a guy diamond layer material.
And he calls the Tanziri to fight and says,
Please demonstrate the knowledge you've gained so far.
and then Tanjiro says,
You will get hurt.
then the boy laughs and says to you,
Actually, I think you can touch me.
and he attacks Tanjiro, and he tells that he has also cut this stone earlier, and here we see Tanjiro gets badly beaten, and the boy says that,
You have not learned anything in a year and a half. You have just remembered things and your body is still as weak as before.
and the boy knocks Tanjiro unconscious and hands him over to a girl. Now when Tanjiro regains consciousness at night, he asks the girl,
Did you see him? How amazing he was, and I wanted to be like him.
and then the girl says,
Yes, that's precisely why I'm here. And
He says his name is Makamo and I prove that boy's name. Now Makamo tells Tanjiro his mistakes and guides him, and we find out that these two were orphans and they were brought up by the same old man, and she says that.
And many more. They are all children, watching over you.
Now 6 months pass and Tanjiro's challenges Sabat's. But this time Tanjiro's sword hits Sabit first and Sabit's flesh is cut, which makes him smile and they both disappear somewhere in the mist. And as the mist is removed, Tanjiro sees that the stone becomes 2 parts. And that's where the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see that Tanjiro Manhaiman says that I am so.
I succeeded because I've mastered detecting the initial threat, alerting me when and where to strike. Upon sighting it, I act swiftly and attack precisely.
Subsequently, the Kurok postman arrives displaying expressions of astonishment as he remarks,
I had no plan to send you to the final stage because I didn't want to see another child die. I wish you couldn't cut it, but you impress me a lot. I'm proud of you.
Hearing this, Tanjiro's eyes will fill with tears. And Urokodaki says,
Hoping you'll come back alive from the final round, your sister and I will be waiting for you.
Now when Tanjiro is cutting his hair at night after eating food, Uroko calls the postman.
One thing to remember is that the more monsters eat humans to win, the more their strength increases, and some monsters are like that. It uses magical power. So for your protection, I give you this warding max. Protection magic has been done on G's now in the morning.
When Tanjiro meets his sister and starts to leave, he bids farewell to Rokodaki and says as he goes,
Sabita and Makamo have to say hello from me.
But stop listening to this is enough. He contemplates.
That. How does Tanjiro know the names of those 2 dead children?
Now, by evening, Tanjiro reaches for the final round. When there are many more people there, 2 girls tell them that.
At night, your final round will start. Wisteria bloom a lot of monsters on Mount Fuji here. It is imprisoned with the help of, which the demons dislike very much, and you all have to avoid all these for 7 days.
With this, the final round starts and everyone moves towards the forest. Then Tanjiro mind itself thinks that,
I just have to stay away from them at night because in the morning they will die of water on their own.
Tanjiro smells a monster and starts looking for him, and suddenly the monster attacks him. Showing his agility, he moves away from there, and here we see that 2 demons start fighting with each other. I will eat this, and these 2 attack Tanjiro, and Tanjiro with his special sword separates them from the Dar. And we see that those demons become ashes. Now we are shown that this sword was given to him by the Oroko postman, and he had told that this.
The sword is made of special steel which handles the sunlight inside itself, and this sword can completely eliminate the demons. Its name is Nithrin Fort, and the weakest part of the demons was their throat.
Now the Tanzirans hear the sound of a boy screaming, and when he reaches there, he sees a very big monster, seeing which his senses fly away. And we see that the monster has a dead body of a boy in his hand, which he swallows whole, and as soon as he takes that boy, he becomes more powerful and this monster attacks the boy. Now Tanjiro cuts off the hand of the monster to save the boy, but then the monster says, look.
Who else is wearing a fox mask?
Hearing this, Tanjiro gets a bit confused and mentions the demon.
What century is it?
Then Tanjiro says Taisho
Period.
Hearing this, the monster gets very angry and says,
Let me tell you here for so long, those people will not leave you in the post office.
Then Tanjiro says he calls people postman he monsters.
He imprisoned me here, and since then I have been eating people, and so far I have eaten a total of 50 miles. Of these, 13 were stowaways. Are you 14 now? So far, only 2 of the postman's mirrors could face me. One of them was a boy with strange colored hair who was the most powerful of them, and the other was a little girl who wore a floral mono. She was not very powerful, but quite.
It was fast. People are shocked to hear this. What does he think?
He's dead.
Then he calls the monster.
This fox mask of yours resembles that of other Rukodaki's disciples. Sometimes I wonder. Wait, the postman himself tells me about the consumption. I still vividly recall telling that girl she was very sad, and I dismembered his body.
Hearing this, Tanjiro gets very angry and he attacks the monster, but the monster punches him and throws him away and Tanjiro faints there and his mask is also broken. In an unconscious state, Tanjiro sees his younger brother and wakes up at the same time. Tanjiro starts cutting his hands with his sword, but it is of no use because as soon as he cut his hands, they were growing up at the same time. Then he tells the monster that
The boy attempted to decapitate me but failed, and I ended up crushing his head.
Now hearing this, Tanjiro gets angry and cuts off the hands of that monster and reaches his head. The monster seems to think,
You won't be able to cut my street. As soon as you are again, I'm like that boy, I'll crush your seed too.
Everywhere Tanjiro with all his power separates the head of that monster from the house. And with this, the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see that the monster's body starts to burn, and that monster is remembering something. And here we find out that this monster had eaten his elder brother. And as soon as he remembers this, he thinks that
Was my older brother too, and I ate him.
Thinking about this, he becomes deeply saddened, noticing a sorrowful scent emanating from that monster. He offers prayers, hoping for relief.
Dear God, please don't let him become a monster in the next life.
And with that, this monster turns into ashes of water and says that Tanjiro.
Even the people who won were eaten by this monster. They can die peacefully now.
Tanjiro battles even more demons and questions them fervently.
He can convert his sister from a monster to a human.
Despite his efforts, he fails. Over the next 7 days, Tanjiro completes his final round and notices that only 4 people remain. The 2 girls congratulate everyone.
And them.
The cow grows her own solitary cow, and here she tells us that.
This will help with communication.
And I don't know why a boy would cry. There are feet in place. Now tell them to choose more for their sword, from which their sword will be made. And here on the other side we are shown the leader of Damon's Lear Cops, whose crow tells him.
Merely 5 people survived the ordeal.
And here we see that Tanjiro is quite tired and he does it with great difficulty. Maroko arrives at the postman's house and finds Neju awakened from his sleep, which makes Tanjiro very happy. Now Rokodaki is very happy to see Tanjiro alive and hugs him around his neck. Now he comes inside the house and tells the postman Tanjiro to stop.
You are now prepared to combat any monster. Expect to encounter those who wield blood diamond art, and I am confident you will face them.
Now Tanjiro asks,
That is different from the rest of the monsters because of the blood diamond art.
In that case, the postman declines.
I think the Mezuks get their strength from gold, which allows them to gain their strength without eating a human being. Now,
We see 15 days pass and a man comes to Tanjiro who gives his name Haganejuka and says,
I have crafted a sword.
I'm going to tell him the qualities of that sword and say that.
this sword is yours according to its owner. The color changes in me.
It seems that its color is red above.
Now as soon as Tanjiro takes out his sword, the color of that sword turns black, and seeing this he is surprised to bow down. Daki and Hagane, then he says Rokodaki.
It is exceedingly rare for a smart color not to appear.
Oh, now we see that a cry comes up to Tanjiro and tells him,
That diamond layer cops from the side of. I've brought you your first assignment to the northwest. You have to go to a town where a girl goes missing every day. And you have it. You have to find out and kill that monster.
and that's where the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see that Tanjiro wears the uniform of Diamond Slayer Cops and Rokodaki shows him the special of his new uniform. He tells him and he gives him a special type of box which is made of very light wood so that he has to leave with him in the morning time. And walking he reaches Northwest Town where he sees that everyone is talking about the same monster. On the last night, a boy named Kazomi disappears from his fiancée. Tanjiro goes to that boy and starts asking everything. Now Kazomi takes Tanjiro to the place where his fiancée disappeared, and Tanjiro starts to smell the place which gives him the smell of the monster. Now Tanjiro, the whole city starts looking for that monster and Tanjiro tells the boy,
I firmly believe in the existence of that monster.
And we see searching, now it gets night, and the other boy tells Tanjiro that.
You should rest now. We'll find him tomorrow morning together.
Then Tanjiro says,
Monsters come out at night. There will be no benefit in the morning, so we have to find him at night.
Here on the other side we see a girl who continues to sleep, and behind her we get to see a shadow, and as soon as her eye looks, two hands from below come and take her inside the ground, and on this side the transistors realize that monster and they cannot to find her. Goes out. Now he runs away to a house. Then Kazumi finds out that Tanjiro is a member of Demon's Lair. And here Tanjiro smells a girl and a monster, and he starts looking for them, and then Tanjiro starts coming very fast, and as soon as he hits his sword on the ground, he sees a girl and he pulls her out from inside the ground, and we see that that monster comes out of the ground, and Tanjiro finds out that this monster has special powers, and then Tanjiro hands over that girl to Kazumi and says,
Take care, I protect you.
Will do. Only then do we see that this monster attacks the Tanziers. Then the Tanziers realize that these are not three, meaning three forms of the same monster, and here on the other hand we are shown that tell the Tanziras of Urokoda
that there is only one monster who might know how to make your sister human again, and that is the first monster. For thousands of years the earth has been in its midst.
And we see that Tanjiro attacks the monster, but he misses his throat, and Tanjiro only manages to cut off the hands of the monsters who sing back in a few seconds. Then the monster attacked the girl and the boy. Zero starts saving them, then one of the monsters says that,
Give me this 16-year-old girl because her mass will be so delicious.
So says the second monster.
I have eaten a lot of 16-year-old girls in this city, and they are very delicious.
Then one of them shows Kazumi her fiancé's hairpin and tells him that,
I ate him.
I am. And all those monsters attack the Tanziers, due to which the Tanziers cannot focus in one place. Then it comes out of that box and plays under the ear of a monster. Then the monster says,
How can we claim a monster Potan war boss is acceptable?
And then we are shown that the Uroko postal Tanziers, he says that I am.
He has said that all monsters are your enemies, and if a monster attacks a human being, then you have to eliminate him because all humans are your family, and...
With that, the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see that the monster attacks, and Dan Zero is his own. Pass calls, and as soon as Nezuko starts coming near the frogs, a monster attacks him, and Nejo shows his agility by flashing that monster and comes near the frogs. Seeing this, Tanziran understands that Nezuko does not need its protection and can protect itself. Then the Tanziers call the Nezuko.
That I'm going underground. Take care of this boy and girl.
And saying this, he goes inside the ground and goes inside and sees the Tanziras that those demons had eaten the people even to win. Their clothes are floating there. Seeing this, people are very angry. Then we see that those monsters are talking to each other.
The air here is very low. Soon it will suffocate, and there is also a lot of darkness here. It won't show anything. We can easily attack it.
Now it is very dark here, due to which Muktandro starts to miss his training, and as soon as he gets the chance, he slays those monsters with his swords. And here on the other side, we see that the monster is fighting with Nezuko, and Nezuko is beating him badly, and only then we see that monster injures Nezuko on the head. And as he starts to attack again, Tanjiro comes out of the earth and cuts off that monster's hands and says,
Stay away from my sister.
And then Tanjiro asks the monster that
What about Muzan?
Upon hearing this, the monster becomes extremely fearful and says,
I'm forbidden from telling you anything about him.
And here Tanjiro is feeling his fear, and then we see that monster suddenly attacks Tanjiro and Tanjiro. He cuts the throat of the demon with his sword so that he dies there, and here Tanjiro sees that Ko is sleeping and his wounds are also starting to heal, and then Tanjiro gives the boy his fiancé's hairpin and says that,
You have to talk to him.
And then the boy gets angry and says,
Do you really think that? It's so easy to forget someone. It's so easy for you to talk. If you lost someone, you would understand.
Now, after hearing this, when Tanjiro walks with a smile, then that girl realizes that whatever she said was wrong, and she was. He says sorry to Tanjiro and says to the boy on the way to Tanjiro,
that you take care of yourself and deliver this girl safely to her home.
And Tanjiro leaves there, and then a cry comes to Tanjiro and asks him to go to Tokyo for his next assignment. When Tanjiro arrives in Tokyo, he is very surprised to see the dazzle here because it was very new for him, and from above he feels very hungry and he goes to a shop to eat food, but as soon as he starts eating food, he feels a familiar smell which also came to him from his house, and that he starts chasing her, and here we find out that she belongs to Muzan and no one else. Now as soon as Tanjiro reaches him, he sees that Muzan has a child in his hand, and from above she is calling him Dari, and that child's mother is also with her. Seeing this, Tanjiro becomes very interested and starts thinking that one.
What are these people doing with the monster?
Then we see that Muzan cuts a human's throat with his nails so that that human becomes a monster at the same time and cuts his wife, and the episode ends with this. At the beginning of the episode, we see that the monster attacks his wife. Then Tanjiro pounces on the demon to save him and puts a cloth in his mouth, and taking advantage of this thing, Muzan leaves there and says, Tanjiro,
no matter where you run, I will find you. I will follow you to your health, and my sword will be the last thing you will remember.
Then the police come to stop these Tanziras and start removing him from the monster. Then Tanzira says,
I'm the only one who can stop this monster once and for all.
But only then do we see that the whole place is filled with flowers. Then Tanzira thinks
that something is wrong. I'm coming very strong smell, and
then we see a monster who calls the Tanzirs.
That I want to help you.
But they say you.
So be a monster.
And then the demon says yes.
But I'm also a doctor and I want to end Muzan.
And on the other hand, we see that Muzan puts his wife and child in a taxi and sends them home and tells them that. Where he kills some drunks and tells two demons that.
The song where the horn of Aben is said to be upon my head.
Now Tanjiro comes to his sister, and as Tanjiro comes back after eating his food, he sees that a companion of that demon comes to him, and he asks them to go with him, and then he doesn't know why he calls Nezuko ugly, which makes Tanjiran very angry, and he goes with him fighting with the boy. Then we see them walking up to a wall. At first Tanjiro doesn't understand anything, but as soon as that boy touches that wall, he goes through that wall, after which Tanjiro and Nezuko go inside that wall where they see a house. And when they go inside that house, we get to see the same demon there. And she tells her name Tamao and the boy's name is Yashiro. Now Tamao tells that he cursed Muzan. He has made a lot of changes in his body. Then Tanjiro asks,
what changes and what changes?
Then Tamayo explains that he is the one who has made Yushiro a monster and that he does not kill humans and drinks blood but buys blood and drinks it, and from above he needs very little blood. And she explains that.
Me, it took 200 years to turn any human into a monster, yet I could only turn Yushiri into a monster.
Tanjiro asks Tamayo,
is there a way to revert a monster to human?
Then Tamayo says,
there will be a way to do it, and I promise you, I will find a way. But you have to do something for me. I will need the blood of close one of Muzan to make this medicine.
Then Tanjiro says that.
It's not just Satan, but also Satan.
Then we see that two monsters attack their house, and with this the episode ends. I am at the beginning of the episode. We see the demons sent by Muzan attack the Tamayas' house, then one of them tells the other that
there are a lot of monsters here and there is a demon with them.
Then the other monster attacks Tamayo's house with his ball, and we see that his ball is destroying Tamayo's house. A ball from above blows the heads of the Yuseers off. Then Tanjiro tells the Nezuko that Udgai
take the place of the girls.
Then Tamayo says that.
There's a basement below, take him there.
Then she tells the demonic Tanziers that
You must be the one who wears Anafuda earrings.
Hearing this, Tanjiro is shocked and tells Tamayo that
Actually, it's not. They came after me, so you should hide somewhere before Damyo speaks. You pay attention to the fight? You forget that we are also monsters? We don't need your production and...
Here she confronts the monster Tanjiro and her ball ascends towards Tanjiro, yet Tanjiro blocks it with his sword. Still, the ball halts. Tanjiro wonders about the ball's name.
What is the mechanism behind this ball's movement?
Then we see that Yushiro's head starts to grow and he says that I am.
As I said earlier, we should not support the Diamond Slayer. The more we will win, the sooner Ujal will find us.
And then the monster says don't?
From the hands of one of the 12 Kijus, earn when you are going to die.
It says that.
This is probably directly related to Muzan.
We then witness the demon extending 4 additional hands and proclaiming,
Let's engage in this game until you perish.
Earnings think that.
If I use my power, it could endanger the Tanzias.
And on the other side, those balls are viciously dosed, and as Tanjiro slashed through them, they continue to relentlessly attack him. Tanjiro suspects he belongs to 2 monsters.
The distinct smell is wafting through, and even though I heard him say it, I know I'll never reach him like this.
Then Ujiro tells Tanjiro that you are.
Attention should be paid to Eros. He will tell you which side the balls are going to go.
And then Tanjiro says,
Which Eros?
Yunshiro then asks, are you the Eros?
It doesn't appear then.
Tanjiro responds negatively, and Yunshiro bestows upon him the power of his eyes. Tanjiro starts perceiving the Eros and tells Yunshiro,
Let's head outside. Beware of the monster lurking behind the tree.
Sitting there, we observe Tanjiro darting away from the ball and exclaiming, Hurry up! Meanwhile, we see another monster launch an attack, causing Eros to disappear. Tanjiro swiftly cuts off the monster's hand and questions Tamayo.
Is this from Muzan? Is it related?
She says yes.
Ken?
So he says,
We got the first blood sample.
the demon responds.
If you are wounded, prove it with your blood.
And we see that the demon's hand rises again, and on the other side we see that the other demon throws the Nezuko over the Tanziras, and then both the Nezuko and the Tanziras in 2 parts. Tanjiro starts fighting with the arrow-wielding monster. Tanjiro then starts attacking him with his opening thread. But then we see that the monster cuts the opening thread, and the arrows of that monster start throwing Tanjiro around. The other side is fighting the demon, and here we see that he disappears and attacks the monster. Then as soon as Nezuko starts kicking his ball, his leg is cut off and she kicks the demonic Nezuko and throws him away. Tamayo then notices that Nezuko is bleeding profusely and gives him a medicine to heal his wound quickly. On the other hand, we see Kitanjiro fighting with that monster and thinking that
To kill it precisely, I'd need absolute accuracy, but the arrows prevent me from getting close. My sword is ineffective against them.
And then an arrow grabs Tanjiro's arm, and Tanjiro does a backflip and escapes his hold. Then he calls the monster.
You are a lot. This time you saved yourself by moving around in the same direction as Eros, but now you will not be able to save yourself.
And we see that the monster attacks the Tanziras with a lot of arrows, and the Tanziras think that
I need to change their trajectory and counterattack.
then the Tanzirons attack that monster by changing the direction of those arrows with their technology. And that's where the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see Tanjiro separating the head of the monster from the torso, and then he says, the monster.
I won't leave you. I will stay with you no matter what.
And then he attacks Tanjiro with his arrows. At that moment, Tanjiro says that his power is overwhelming.
That's enough already. I have to fight with all my strength or I will be crushed by its hands and...
They start throwing Eros Tanjiri here and there, and Tanjiri uses multiple techniques to save themselves. Now, as that monster burns to ashes, his Eros disappear, and Tanziras fall to the ground. And here we see that a lot of the bones of the Tanzirs are broken. Even it was very difficult for him to taste it, and he says,
Now I am just a monster.
you have to keep it, and he starts crawling by picking up his taste from his mouth. Now here on the other side we see that he is the monster. But he attacks with his ball. But just as the ball is about to hit Yashiro, Nezuko comes and saves him at the right time, and we see that the football match starts between that monster and Nezuko, and she starts throwing the ball towards each other. Seeing this, Yashiro is very surprised. Tamayo tells Yushiro that
All power belongs to the eyes. That is without human. Is blood so powerful?
now we see that Tamayo uses her magic power so that she can weaken anyone's mind, and she asks that demon,
Do you know what is truly real? Allow me to explain it to you. Muzan is a lot of this. Terrified of the rest. The demons don't kill him together. That's why no demon can work together.
Then he says demon.
That's not so. No one is as powerful as Muzan.
Then Tamayo says to that monster,
You have activated the loan by taking Muzan's name.
Hearing this is a monster, she is very afraid, and we see that two big hands come from the mouth and stomach of that monster, which makes pieces of that monster. Now Tamayo tells everyone that
All this happened because of the curse of Muzan, because if a monster takes the name of Muzan, then Muzan destroys all the cells of that monster.
And then Tamayo tells Tanjiro that
This is not one of the tilts of the demonic 12, because 12 has a number on Kujurki's eyes that makes them different from the rest.
now Tamayo takes his blood and keeps it to make his medicine. Then the Tanziras hear a crying sound from the ball of that demon. He puts that ball near that demon, and as soon as morning comes, the remaining body parts of that demon also become ashes of water. Then Tanjiro Mind says that
You have killed and eaten many people, but when your death came, not even your bones remained, and the cause of your death was also the one you followed, Muza. Are you truly a monster?
Tanjiro goes to the basement looking for the others and is very happy to find everyone safe, and we see that Nezuko wraps Tamayo around his neck. Then Tanjiro says,
I think you both are your family.
but Tamayo tells Tanjiro that
Only humans belong to themselves. The family believes that we are monsters.
then the Tanzirs say,
That for Nezuko, you are no less than human and she wants to save you and
Then we see Tamayo hugging Nezuko and crying with joy, and here we find out that Tamayo had converted him into a monster to save the Yuseri and Tamayo Ta. We call it Zero.
that you can send with us if you want. I don't guarantee that she will be safe, and I think she will be safer with us than outside.
Then Tanjiro starts thinking,
They are right. She is safer with them than with me.
Nezuko is Tanjiro's companion. Tanjiro acknowledges and communicates with her, then informs Tamayo.
No one can separate Nezuko and me for any offer.
And they both start leaving from there and say to Kiro Tanjiro from behind.
Your sister is a beauty.
And Tanjiro starts laughing. And in the next scene, we see that he asks Crow Tanjiro 5,000 to go to Southeast for his next assignment. And with this, the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see Tanjiro going to his next assignment. And only then he sees a boy lying at the feet of a girl and says,
Please marry me. I don't want to die.
Seeing this, Tanjiro is quite surprised. Then the boy Sparrow comes to Tanjiro and tells him everything. And then Tanjiro says,
Yes, I will help you.
Then Tanjiro goes to the boy and says that he is the girl.
You are not interested and you should not disturb your sparrow either.
And the boy says you.
The same finest. Are you nervous?
Then Tanjiro says that.
Don't pretend like I know who you are.
And then the boy says,
Please don't do that.
and then Tanjiro tells that girl that you.
Can you go home?
But the boy still doesn't believe me. Then the girl says I am.
Doesn't love you. You understand so much. I'm not going to come anyway
He departs from there, and then the boy informs the Tanzirs that
if I die a virgin, it will be your fault.
Upon hearing this, Tanzir becomes extremely confused and asks the boy,
You are aware that in the next assignment I will perish because of my weakness.
And he introduces himself as Janitsu and proceeds to say that.
Please save me.
Then Tanjiro says that,
If you didn't fight, why did you participate in the final selection?
and then he says that,
An old man forced me to train, and even in the final selection from above, I survived. I'm afraid that soon the monsters will eat me, and
it starts shaking. Then we see Tanjiro and Janet Soup go for the next assignment. When Janat gets hungry, Tanjiro gives her his last remaining food. Then the boy offers Tanjiro food and they both start eating together. Then Tanjiro says,
That you always go after girls and take a lot of snoring and don't even work. You don't bother your feet so much, shouldn't.
So the boy asks,
Who told you all of this?
Tanjiro says that this.
The feet.
Hearing this, the boy is very surprised and says,
Do you know the language of that parody?
Tanjiro's crows tell them to keep going. Now we see that Tanjiro smells of a monster and he starts chasing him and keeps walking. He comes to a house and says,
Its smell is very fast.
and then the boy says,
What smells like I'm just getting a voice?
Then they see a boy and a girl standing under a tree, very scared. Then Tanjiro calms them down and asks them everything. They were going somewhere at night, but a monster picked up their brother. He takes them, and when they follow him, they come here. Then they say to you,
Be very brave and you don't need to fickle. We saved your brother.
will take. But then we see that Janusu starts to hear the sound of drums, which was increasing continuously, and then a boy soaked in blood comes out and falls and dies at the hands of Tanjiras, and Tanjira says that,
I'm sorry. If I had come sooner, I might have saved you.
inquire from the children that,
Is this your brother?
so he says, no, our brother was wearing orange mono. Then Tanjiron says, what does that mean?
That monster has indeed captured more individuals.
And then Zero says, giving his box to those children.
If you ever face trouble, it will come to your rescue.
And they both go inside that house, and then we see that those children also come inside the house and say that we were hearing strange noises from that box. Then Tanjiro says that,
You shouldn't have left him alone because he loves me more than my life.
Then we see that they start hearing the sound of a drum, which makes them quite afraid, and the sound of the drum starts changing the room, from which we see that they get separated, and a monster comes out of the Tanjira's room, and the Tanjiras feel that there is more monster here, and this is the boss of them all, and we see that Janetsu is crying and says,
That how I got separated from the Tanzias, now I will not survive.
the little child motivates him saying, you possess a sword.
If you have him.
Don't use it.
What's the benefit of that?
Janetsu says, listening.
Your words touch my heart deeply. Gone and forever.
They start looking for a way out of that house, but as soon as they open the outside gate, they reach another room which they are very surprised and start looking for a way out like crazy. But then they find a strange person in a room who sees Zainotsu scared, and here we see that Tanjiro tells the girl where you are.
Hide and...
Then he calls the monster.
How can you return home without asking?
Yes, and then we see Tanjiro take out his sword and say,
That my name is Tanjiro and I have come to finish you and...
Then we observe that as soon as the monster strikes his drum, the room flips upside down. Panzero says,
This is blood demon art.
and so the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see Tanjiro smelling a different type of smell, and then the boy with the pig head comes into the room. Now, as soon as that boy starts attacking that monster hits his drum and flips that room. Then Tanjiro tells him that.
This monster possesses unique abilities, making it impossible to kill directly.
However, he doesn't trust anyone, and eventually places his foot on that girl and says,
It's incredibly entertaining.
Shortly after, Tanjiro tosses him away saying,
Keep your feet away from this girl.
and then the boy asks,
Who are you? No one has ever dared to do this to me.
throws him aside and attacks the Tanzir saying,
My swat will inflict great damage on you.
then Tanjiro says, are you?
Are you blind? Doesn't that look like a monster?
Then we see that the monster attacks Kolo on them, but they dose him and escape, but the monster returns to the room. Starts acting, and Tanjiro realizes that whenever the monster strikes its stomach drum, Kolo attacks. If it hits other drums, the room flips, revealing the room's transformation as Tanjiro ponders.
This time the monster didn't even hit the drum. How did this room change? Isn't there another monster here who has a drum?
Tanjiro starts coming out of that room and he starts smelling blood, and as soon as he comes out of that room he sees a human corpse, so he takes that girl away. Then Tanjiro gets a unique smell, and when he goes from room to room he sees a child who has a drum in his hand, and on the other hand we are shown the scene of Janitsu where we see that a monster falls behind them and both run into a room and Janitsu falls asleep out of fear, and we see that monster comes into that room and with his tongue, as soon as he starts attacking them, then suddenly we see that his tongue is cut off and Janitsu stands on his feet, and we get to see his different form here. Even that monster is afraid of seeing this form of him, and Janitsu with his technique separates the head of that monster from fear in one blow. And as soon as his sleep is broken, he is afraid to find the monster dead and tells the child that, "Thank you for killing this monster." Then we see the boy with the pig's head who explains,
I've been here for the past 3 days.
but then a monster attacks him but he escapes, and that monster, the monster says,
You are very bony. You will have a lot of fun eating.
Only then we see that the boy with the pig's mouth cuts off both the hands of that monster with one blow, and with the second blow he moves forward, painting the head of that monster with his feet, and on the other hand we see that this drum monster is looking for Meriki, and he starts to think,
If I eat too many people, I will be included back in the 12.
Then we are shown that Muzan says to the monster,
When you can't eat those humans, if not, you have no business with me.
Removing the number from its eye, Muzan concludes that the monster,
If I consume more people, they will provide their blood, enhancing my power.
and here we see that we find the lost brother of that little girl. And when the Tanzira start to put ointment on the wounds of that little girl, then that child tells that,
And that monster had brought him here, so all 3 monsters would eat him.
they're fighting and
They are one of those monsters with a drum. One of his drums falls during the battle, and I really like him.
I'll pick it up and hit.
My room changes, and that's why I was alive for so long.
He says he doesn't know anything.
Thank you, that monster was calling me Mariachi.
And then we see Tanjiro's crows telling them,
Mariachi is a rare blood type, and 1 Mariachi is equal to 100 humans, and Mariachi is a favorite food for demons.
Then Tanjiro suddenly smells of that monster and tells those children that,
But I have to go now. If you feel any letter, then you change your room with this drum, and I will find you with your smell.
and then we see that the monster comes out of their room and those children change their room with the help of drums, and here that monster starts flipping that room rapidly with his drum. 0 until then. Want.
So Mayo bandaged my ointment, but my wounds still haven't healed. And will I be able to beat it? But I have to beat it. I am the eldest son in my house, but these broken bones of mine are preventing me from doing so. And if I go too close, its losses will tear me to pieces.
And then the Tanziri remembers the Urs talking about the potato who said that.
If you put water in any vessel, it will conform to its shape.
And Tanziran remembers his 10 water breathing forms, and he says that even if my bones are broken, I will beat you. That's my promise to myself, and that's where the episode ends. At the beginning of the note, we see that he is looking for the tankers and praying that the tankers are safe. Then the child asks what?
Is it just me, or are we really going round and round?
Then Janitsu says,
I feel the same way.
then the child says,
Will you open the room and see if anyone is inside?
or not. Then Janitsu is quite afraid and
Says, why me and him?
again, we start looking for tattoos. But then JD gets the sound of that drum, and they both are thrown straight out of the house. And here on the other hand, we see that that monster is still dancing the Tanziras to the tune of his drum, and the Tanziras think it seems that.
I am conquered by my fractured bones, because I complete what I begin.
And we see that the monster is still playing his drum and thinks that the Tanzirs.
My broken bones won't hinder me from defeating it. I must remain calm and figure out how to conquer it.
Now that monster gets very irritated and says,
I must consume Mauchi soon before Viru departs.
then Tanjiro questions the monster.
What's your name?
And then that demon bids you farewell and Tanjiro responds,
Listen to me, I will not let you eat that child. It is absolutely useless for you to try.
and then the monster says,
I will consume the baby now. In how many places do I regain my standing?
and he starts attacking the Tanjiras with even more force, and this we see that we are shown the past of that monster, and we see that he is a writer, and the man tells him that,
Your writing is utterly worthless. Don't dare call yourself a writer. You're good for nothing. Stick to playing your drums and forget about writing.
and we see that the monster gets angry and cuts the man to pieces, and on this side we see that the monster gets very angry and starts playing the drum very fast so that the room starts spinning round. But just like when they hit the ground, when he lands on the paper without putting his foot on the paper, the monster hesitates a little, and then Tanjiro attacks the monster with all his strength while dodging the monster's attack and says,
Your blood demon, art is so incredible.
Hearing this, the monster is very surprised and Tanjiro's throat is separated from the torso, and we see that the body of that monster begins to burn. Then he asks the monster Tanzirs,
Do you really think my blood gone and out was incredible?
so the Tanzirs say.
I will always remember ending your life.
And then the monster thinks,
He disregarded my work, but at least he acknowledged me. I value this by not keeping the foot on the pump.
and we see that Tanjiro takes the blood sample of that monster, and that monster dies of water, and we see that a cat of Kamayo comes to Tanjiro, and she takes the blood sample and goes away. Now Tanjiro reaches a room looking for the children where he is. And he starts finding a way to take them out, and here, on the other hand, we see that Janitsu is unconscious, and that child is picking him up, and as soon as Janitsu wakes up, that child tells him that.
You got me.
Relieved, Janitsu comments.
Then you stop.
Then he came to understand that he had landed on his head, and he starts to wail loudly.
I believe I might die, as I'm feeling very dizzy.
However, they then hear the noise of someone approaching, filling them with fear. Subsequently, it becomes clear it's the same pig-faced boy, and Jansu remarks on it.
This is the fifth boy to make it to the final selection of the first trial. He bypassed the management.
And it's at this moment we observe the pig-faced boy attacking Nezuko's box, and Janetsu intervenes, commenting on the situation.
This box is very important for Teziro.
Yes, then the boy says, who are you, all Janetsu tells.
I'm just like you, a genuine demon.
I'm Layer, then the boy says.
From my way. Get away. You should know that our job is to eliminate all monsters.
But Janatsu says that,
You can't do that. This box is dearer to Tanzir's than his life, than that boy.
he says,
If that's the case, I'll slice you with this box.
I will, and Janatsu also says.
Do what you have to do, but I won't stop.
So the boy says.
Don't you realize there's a monster inside?
That's what Janetsu says.
I knew from the beginning because I was hearing a demon's voice coming from the Tanzira's box, but that voice matched a human quite well, and I trust the Tanzira's. He must have a reason to keep a monster with him.
We witness the boy being extremely courageous. Even as his blood spills, Janitsu prevents anyone from touching the box. Meanwhile, Tanjiro emerges from the house with the children, stunned to see Janitsu kill. Janitsu then informs Tanjiro
That I didn't let anyone touch your box, because you said that this box is dearer to you than your life, and so I saved it.
and that boy starts killing Janitsu again, and with that the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see that the pig-faced boy is beating Jansu, and seeing this, Tanjars get very angry and he uses his full strength. The pig attacks the baby and punches him hard in the stomach, breaking his bone. Then Tanjiro says, "Are you crazy?"
Yes, you don't know that any Diamond Slayer is forbidden to wield a sword on each other.
Then he says, "Boy with a mouthful of pigs."
If this is the case, they will fight without a sword.
That's Tanjiro attacking. Since then he's been thinking,
How can it fight like this? His bones have already been broken. Then,
what? Zero starts fighting the boy, and Mine thinks that.
I feel like I'm fighting a wild animal.
Then what? Zero bangs his head on hers to calm him down, and we see that boy's mask falls down, and Janitsu says that.
Are you one?
She's a girl, she says.
What did you say again?
So Zenitsu says nothing. Then Tanjiro says that now?
You should calm down. I don't want to fight you.
But the boy says,
No, you must fight me now.
and he says his name is Inosuke. Then Tanjiro says that.
How do you spell that?
And then the boy says,
I am unsure of how to read and write that.
and we see that all of a sudden he faints, and that's when all the Tanjiros start praising how strong he is. Then Jalsu thinks,
There is not a single drop of blood on anyone's head. How can it be so hard?
In the following scene, we observe Inos falling asleep, and as soon as he awakens, he begins to speak to me. Then they tell us that we are dead.
People have been buried. Please help us immediately.
However, Inosuke refuses and states,
Then fight me.
Tanjiro says,
I understand why you do not want to help us, because you're also going through some kind of pain, but you do not need to take tension. Everything will be fine.
Then you say, Inosuke.
Do not worship, underestimate, and
We see that a crow comes over there and asks them to come down from the mountain, and he all starts coming down from the mountain. Then we see that that crow gives those children wisteria so that they can avoid any monster. And now those children walk towards their house, and that crow has to chase him, says. Here Inos asks Tanzirs to fight continuously, but Tanzirs ignore him and move forward. Now we see that it's night.
And they proceed.
They reach a house where the crows instruct them.
This is rest time, so I have to rest to recover myself.
And we see an old woman come out, and she asks them to come in, and later she gives them her room and food, which she calls Janitsu.
That this is Lady Moisture, because how can a human being prepare all this so quickly? And
We see that everyone starts eating food, then goes to their room to sleep, and then that lady adjoins them to a doctor, which checks them up and tells them that some of their bones are broken, and then they go to sleep. Then Tanjiro tells everyone that
this Wisteria family was once saved by the Demon Slayer, so they decided that they would always help the Demon Slayer.
Tanjiro then asks Inosuke that.
Why did you join Demon Slayer then?
He tells,
that once I was challenged by a demon lair to see which of us is more powerful. So I defeated him and kept his sword. And later I found out that there are a lot of demons in the world, and to kill them, I have to take part in the final election.
Then Janitsu asks Tanjiro this.
Tell me one thing, you're a monster. Why are you taking it with you?
Then Tanjiro says,
That means you already knew you still protected my box. Thank you for that. And you are really very powerful, and
let's see that Tanjiro's box starts to open, which Janmitsu says.
Tanjiro, do something. That monster is coming out.
So Tanjiro says you.
Don't figure.
But then the door of that box opens, and Janetsu goes to Inosuke for help, but he kicks him and throws him near the box, and then Meiju comes out, seeing which Janetsu gets angry at Tanjiro and says that.
How can you take a beautiful girl to my wedding? Because of you, it's cancelled. I won't forgive you.
And he falls with a sword behind the Tanziras, and with that, the episode ends. At the beginning of the episode, we see that Najo comes out of his box, which Zenitsu puts a rope on him, and starts hovering around him like a bee. Then Tanjiro comes between them and says,
Stop chasing my sister.
Then he starts chasing the Tanzirs and says,
Let's be the best of friends.
and here on the other side we see that the bad woman says to him,
That your clothes are very dirty, you give it to me, and by then you can wear these clothes. I will wash your clothes and return them.
and we see that comes to Inos's room and attacks the Tanziras, and then they start walking around the 3 rooms, and we see that the doctor tells the 3 of them that he has fully recovered, which he is happy to hear. And Ektro comes to him and asks the 3 of them to go northeast, and he thanks that old woman, saying that she starts leaving from there, and that lady calls her good luck, and all